Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to another Tuesday Cruiser Chat with Otram. Nothing really on the agenda to talk about today. Let's see, news at the shop. We've got the new side starting to get set up. Spent the long weekend putting up shelving, organizing all the used parts and the random tools that didn't have a home. Did some wiring, got the new lift and AC wired up, ran welding plugs over there, and finished running air lines over there today. So the new side of the shop is finally functional, which is really nice because we've had it for a couple of months now, but not haven't been able to use it because it hadn't been super functional. Hey Jim, how's it going? So it's nice to have that up and functioning. But as a side note to that, this chat tonight might be shorter than usual. I am exhausted from working all weekend, and then I decided to go for a long run this morning because the weather was good. So between yoga and a long run this morning and pulling airlines all day, I am exhausted. So I'm not sure how long I'm going to last for chat this evening. But yeah, we've got some of the bigger jobs in the shop are finally making headway. We're getting the last of the parts in and jumping back on those. And I should have the parts to get the Shady 80 running later this week, so I may do that next weekend so I can start driving it. And that is awesome. The Cocopelli Trail sounds super cool. We've been out hiking around Arizona, but I've never gone four-wheeling out there. And hey Timothy, how's Texas? I'd imagine it's really hot. Oh yeah, I was gonna say thanks for the kudos on Strava. I think you're the only person that's actually followed me on there because I don't really post much because I just started and I'm just starting running. How much has it rained? It's crazy. Like they've been threatening for rain, like thunderstorms every day for like the last week. And my mom came over and let the dogs out Sunday because I was at the shop and she was like, "Hey, you need to water all the plants on your porch." I'm like, it's supposed to rain. But it hadn't. And then yesterday, it just cut loose in the morning. There was probably 6 to 8 inches of water going through the parking lot at the shop. Highways around here got closed. Parking garages flooded. Neighborhoods flooded in closer to DC. It was crazy. Like it just poured. But it was nice because it'd been in the mid 90s and really humid here. The weather finally broke last night, and it was like 70 and low humidity when I got up this morning, which is why I decided to finally try for a long run, which is probably a short run for most people, but it was a long run for me, and I was very happy with it. Hey, how's it going? 646 Silver. And yeah, I can't imagine being in Arizona now. When we went out hiking, I think we went in May a couple of years ago, and it was wicked hot then. Yep. And it looks like my internet's messing up. What year or what vehicle are you looking for the charcoal canister replacement for? Granted, I don't know that I'm going to have any recommendations other than calling Toyota. I know there's one. It's like a Blazer or a Bronco one that fits the 80 series, but I've actually done the mods up exactly which charcoal canister that is people use. But if you search the 80 series section on I Hate Mud, there should be a couple of threads on it. I think it's a Bronco charcoal canister, but it might be Blazer. but I know people are using those as a replacement. And I don't know if they're using them because you can't get the factory one anymore, or if the factory one is just wicked expensive. And yeah, changing out the heater tees, it should be like regular maintenance, like changing the oil. Oh, and thanks. See, somebody on here is going to know which charcoal canister it is. Yeah, see, I've never had anybody come in with any complaints about the charcoal canister or the high pressure when you let the fuel cap loose. So we've never actually had to look into replacing anything on it. Recommendation for a 62 power steering pump. My general recommendation on power steering pumps is to get the factory Toyota ones, but I'm almost positive that you can't get the factory one for a 62 anymore. I've had good luck with Maval brand. It's like Maval. You can get them from Whirlpack. I don't think Whirlpack sells to the general public, but Advance Auto Parts owns them now and Advance can order Whirlpack stuff. So Maval is the one I've had the best luck with. The Cardones just don't seem to work well. I unfortunately don't have any good tips for cleaning the block. We use a carbide scraper. You have to be real careful with it not to scratch the block. But the carbide scraper does a really good job of, getting all the old gasket material and crap like that. But that's the only real tip I've got. It is just a sucky job. The other tip, it is a topside creeper. It looks kind of like a diving board that you roll over the engine and you lay on it, instead of being bent over. But yeah, other than that, it's just a pain. And yeah, if missing the 3-wire with the clip, yeah, I've seen people hack those off, and I'm not sure why they do it. So yeah, hopefully it's the end you can still get from Toyota. If not, you're gonna have to do some splicing. Some splicing of the wires. For FJ40s, most common, we use the Allman Emu. They seem to ride the best and be the most thorough and easy to get. So yeah, I like the Allman Emus. I actually have one coming tomorrow for a 40 that's actually replacing like a 4-inch Skyjacker because the ride is so rough in the Skyjacker. So we're lowering it a little bit and doing Allman Emu. Shop truck is still in limbo, although I should have the last parts I need to get it roadworthy sometime this week. So I'm hoping to actually have time this weekend to rebuild the knuckles, put the new axles in, and do the front wheel bearings and brakes. And then it'll pass safety inspection, and I can start driving it to see what else it needs before we start doing bumpers and lift and everything else on it. Oh, and to stand in the lift, I would get the complete Allman Emu suspension, like the greasable shackles, the greasable shackle pins. Get the entire, they usually, like, Cruiser Outfitters lists it as like the ultimate set. chances are you're going to have to cut the old spring pins out because they're going to be corroded into the bushings. So it's a lot easier to just order the complete ultimate set from the get-go and have everything, and then just totally not care about having to cut parts out. That truck was not a cream puff when you sold it to me. But it was exactly what I was looking for. Missed my mouth. I've never had to get into any of the wiper wiring on an 80 series. I'm gonna have to get into it on mine because the you've got to like whack the wiper motor to get it to turn on. So I've either got corrosion in the harness or the motor sticking, but I've never gone into it to see what's going on. I'd have to look up wiring diagrams. On the older stuff, it's usually in the motor itself. Like you just lose that functionality. But on the newer stuff, it could be in the switch. I'm not sure. Yeah, we generally don't use customer supplied parts at the shop. Unless it's like, some oddball, only one person supplies it in the world part that we just don't have a source for. We don't use customer supplied parts. It's just easier for us to do the entire process start to finish. So if we do the lift, generally we supply the parts. I've got, I believe, 2 customers that are in line for Joey's turbo kit. One that I know for sure. And we're doing new Toyota short block, rebuilding the head, and all that jazz when we do his kit. When we do the turbo kit, I've got a Cometic MLS head gasket and ARP studs sitting at the shop waiting for that job. So whenever he gets the kit from Joey, he's bringing us the engine and everything down so that we can swap everything in. So that should be a really fun job. I think the turbo kit's going to be super nice. Everything Joey makes is super nice. Which reminds me, he posted pictures of a power steering gear removal wrench that he was making, and I need to go on his site and order that. I'm going to write myself a note. Yeah, the plan is to film the turbo install. It's one of those, I have no idea when we'll be getting it in. It just depends on where my customer is in the wait list for Joey's kit. But yeah, I'm planning to film it, which it should be nice because I'm hoping to be able to do the install with the engine on the stand, at least for the majority of it. So, it'll be clear and easy to see, to film, rather than doing it in the truck, since we'll have the engine out anyway. That is a good question. I have yet to figure out how to effectively hide the fun truck fund. That's part of the reason that the shop truck is moving along so slowly, and why my 4Runner hasn't wheeled in like 10 years. I've got the added benefit of having an auto repair business, so I can write a lot of it off as advertising, um, and shop truck maintenance. But yeah, without having a Land Cruiser shop, I'm not quite sure how you hide that. I mean, you're gonna hit the axle seal a little bit putting it in, but if you hold like inboard of the berth in one hand and push down on the berth with the other hand, you can kind of balance it and not put any drag against the axle seal until you get to the last little bit. And then you're just kind of have to hop it and get it into the differential. But you wanna touch the axle seal as little as you can while you're putting the axle in, because otherwise you're gonna tear up the seal. That's the whole reason you're doing the rebuild in the first place. I'm trying to think. I don't have anything here to demonstrate, but yeah, like if this was the axle and you're going into the housing, you can kind of push on the outside of the berth and kind of level it out and get it in there. Yeah, and you're gonna have to push down a little bit to get the inner splines to hop up into the diff. You just want to be as gentle as you can while you're doing that part. You get used to it after a while. I don't even want to know how many knuckle jobs I've done. I've got to be well over 200 at this point. I've done way too many knuckles. And Crash is catching up on me quickly. He did the better part of 2 knuckle jobs today. No problem. Well, the one saving grace is if you did nick the seal going in, you don't have to take the knuckle off the next time around. You can just take the spindle off, pull the axle out, do the seal, and put it all back together. So it's not quite as bad as it was the first time around. How long have I been doing mechanical surgery? Like on my own stuff, like, fixing my own vehicles and like doing lifts and things like that. I started in like 96, 97, somewhere in there. Um, Went to welding school in the late 90s. And then did body work, like collision and restoration and paint, for about a decade. And then I switched over to doing purely mechanical in 2010, I think. 2010, 2011, somewhere in there. So 20, I'm terrible at math, like 24 years. But purely mechanical and fabrication for like 10. So yeah, it's been a while. My 4Runner Truggy that I've got that used to be my wheeling truck and now is just a fixture of the parking lot. I think I bought that in 95. So yeah, I've had the 4Runner a long, long time. Thanks. I'm glad you like the videos. What am I getting for my birthday? Well, I did buy myself some axles. I bought some RCVs for the Shady 80, but I bought myself some new running shoes for my birthday, which I'm pretty excited about those. For like working on my own personal junk and fabrication, it was always Toyotas. Doing collision and restoration work, a lot of it was Toyota, but then there was a lot of like European stuff thrown in there too. And then there was a stint where I did like all makes, all models for a while. I'm a fan of the IBS dual battery systems. They're super easy to install and haven't really had any problems out of them. That would require me to remember to order more t-shirts in order to have a raffle for them. I always forget. I actually need to order more because I've only got one. But yeah, the t-shirts are down in the link below if anybody's interested in OTRAM t-shirts. I need to come up with a new design too. Power steering for a 40, if you're looking for like true factory power steering parts, it can be a pain to find them. We usually do the mini truck conversion, which uses a straight axle pickup steering box from like 79 to 85. And then George out at Valley Hybrids does a bracket to mount it where your manual steering box is. And he uses a Saginaw pump that's easy to come by. And it's a really nice setup, and it's not super difficult to install. Like if you were hustling, you could probably do it in a weekend. The electric power steering racks, or not racks, but power steering columns, I think City Racer sells them. Those seem to be really nice if you're not going to run big tires. I know Marshall down at Trollhole uses them quite a bit. And we just did a 60 power steering conversion to a 40. That was also really nice. I like the way that turned out, and that's not horrible to do. And yeah, I probably will not be running any marathons anytime soon. My longest run was the one today, and I just barely broke 4 miles. So yeah, I'm a ways off from a marathon. And yeah, no high and tight. It's just really hot here. So when I got my hair cut Saturday, I had them cut it really short. But yeah, the mini truck is the one we usually use because it's easiest. It's easiest, and with George's brackets, it's super nice. It's getting harder, at least locally, to find the steering boxes. But depending on where you are in the country, that may be easier. And thanks, John. I appreciate it. I always like it when people hit the little money button because that goes straight into the Shady 80 fund. How long will Old Man Emu last on an 80? That's a really good question. I don't know. I mean, I've seen some that are probably 10 years old, if not more. It just, it depends on if you wheel it hard, if you overload it a lot, just how you treat it. I mean, they seem to be, pretty reliable. It just depends on how you treat it and how rusty, like salty it is. Because generally we see them, like we see the shocks succumb to rust before we actually see stuff wear out. And thanks, T. Reagan. I appreciate it. Making all the Shady 80 money today. Awesome. Thanks for tuning in, Timothy. Glad the videos have been helpful. It's funny. I can't imagine people subscribing to the Otram show. On the 80 series, we generally run 530 because that's what the oil cap says. As they get to be, much higher mileage, sometimes that's a little bit on the thin side if they're starting to use oil. But generally 530 is what we run in them. I know a lot of people run the heavier weight oils, like 1540 Rotella. But yeah, 530 is generally what we run. That's what's in my truck. And John, I'm glad the chats are helping you save. Awesome. Glad the truck did well and didn't break down on you for the trip. That adds new faith in mine at 350,000 that I could actually take it on a trip. I mean, we've got customers in the higher 200,000s that are still running 530 with no oil burning. It just, it depends. A lot of it seems to depend on the condition of your valve stem seals, which I don't know how much a slightly thicker oil is going to help there. Yeah, I can't imagine, doing mountain passes in an 80. It's got to be like, we had a little 86 Tercel when we lived in Boston, and sometimes there was hills that it's like, man, this car is not going to make it to the top of this hill. It was just screaming in first gear. Yeah, luckily out here, it's mostly flat. We just use 80/90, just general house brand, store brand gear oil. Like ours is, usually CarQuest brand, because that's what the local guys have. We just get it in the 5-gallon bucket because we use so much of it. But yeah, I'm not super particular on gear oil. God, I haven't been to Peter's Mill. It's got to be at least 15 years since I've been out to Peter's Mill. Because it was back, I think the last time I was there, it was like a New Year's Day run with off-camber crawlers way back in the day. No problem. Hopefully the videos are helpful with the new 80. I guess it depends on where you live. I don't know that you're going to get enough heat out of the rear heater, um, to heat the truck. And like Zach's saying, which I wouldn't have even have thought of, is you'll want front heat for defrost. Yeah, the little Tercel I was just talking about that we had in Boston had no heat. And in the winter, it sucked because you had to drive with the windows down to keep the windshield from fogging up. And yeah, maybe I'll take the 80 out there as a shakedown run once I get it running. How do you take care of noisy power steering? A lot of the times, a new box it ends up being the ultimate fix. Although, I just went brain dead. Lucas, power steering stop leak seems to work wonders in Toyota power steering. Like, I'm not a fan of like mechanic in a can, like fix it kind of fluids, but the power steering stop leak from Lucas seems to really help with, minor leaks and noisy pumps, because it seems like the pumps, a lot of times they get noisy because people run power steering fluid in them instead of ATF, and the power steering fluid is a little bit thinner and seems to make them wear out faster. Yeah, I always forget Joey's got rebuild kits over at Wits End now. If it's noisy after a motor swap, it may just not be fully bled out yet. How long have you run it since the motor swap? Yeah, I don't get why we get trolls on here. I don't feel like we should be that. I don't think this chat is big enough to get trolls on here, but we seem to get them every week. If you've been driving it for a week, it probably isn't air in the system. Does it sound like is it actually like cavitating fluid in the pump? Or I've seen it before, not often, like people have chipped the drive gear where the power steering pump goes into the timing cover. I've seen the drive gear get chipped and make a lot of noise. But it's more of like a clicking kind of baseball card in bicycle spokes kind of sound. Sounds like you have a tiny supercharger. Does it change when you steer, or is it like a constant whine? And are you sure it's the power steering pump and not the alternator bearings? Because usually, not always, but usually when it's power steering pump, changing like steering will change the sound. I guess it could also be that idler pulley that sits on the front of the like the oil pump cover. Yeah, if you're getting it when you steer as well and it changes, it probably is power steering pump. Oh, and yeah, Zach's got a good point. You could run it without the belts because the power steering pump is gear driven. So if the noise is still there, it's definitely power steering pump. Hmm. Ah, yeah, it seems like not all of the trucks even had the idler pulley. We see quite a few of them that don't have it. Whether they just got lost in the past or they never came with it, I'm not sure. But yeah, they run fine without them. And it is pretty useless. I think it's just there to keep the belt from slapping on that long run, because a lot of times the belts don't even touch it. But yeah, if you took all the belts back off and ran it for a bit, that would rule out AC, water pump, and alternator. So if it was still making noise, you'd know for sure it was the power steering pump. Granted, that doesn't get you to a good fix, beyond rebuilding it or replacing it. Oh, and that's a good question too. If the pump came with the donor engine, it could have crap in it from sitting with the lines off of it, or it could have just not been a great motor or great pump to begin with. Trying to think of what else you could do. Okay, and the old pump didn't have any problems pre swap. Um, did you put new suction hoses on, like the fat hose that goes from the reservoir down to the pump inlet? I've seen those get brittle and crack with age, and it could be sucking air in through the suction hose, and that would make it whine. And that would theoretically start with the swap. Um, because you were manhandling it, and it could have gotten cracked then, and you could be sucking air in, and you're hearing the air go through the pump, but that's just a guess. Okay, well that rolls that out. Um, a lot of times you'll get a crack in the hose, like especially on the suction hose, that it's not really a big enough crack that the thicker fluid will go out through it. And because it's a suction hose, it's not under pressure, but it's sucking fluid through, and it'll pull tiny amounts of air in through the crack into the fluid, and it'll aerate the fluid as it goes through, and then you'll get the whine. Yeah, I've seen it a couple of times where the suction hose cracked and it wasn't leaking, but it was making, just letting just a little bit of air in, just enough to make it whine. I'm not sure then, unless, just a chunk of grit, dirt, just, crap got into the pump or one of the hoses, while you were swapping the motor, and, wiped something out. Um, and yeah, if you had a axle seal leaking, I would change the front diff oil, just because a lot of times when we do it, like we've taken them apart that have so much grease in the gear oil. It's crazy. Like I had one, we pulled the drain plug, nothing came out. I thought the guy's diff was empty. Pulled the fill plug, put my finger in there, um, and it was full, but it was like slam full of grease. It took like a case of brake clean to break the grease up enough to get it to flow out the bottom to where we could even put gear oil back in. But they all, when they get the knuckles done, they all seem to have some grease having infiltrated into the gear oil. So yeah, it's cheap and it's easy. We generally do it. Yeah, it was crazy. Like, I have no idea how it got that much grease in there. It was, completely full in the diff. Like, you're probably fine just draining the gear oil and filling it back up. It was a very, very rare case that we had to go in there with brake clean to free up the grease. Like, most of the time it just drains out fine. So yeah, you just drain and fill it and you're all good. The brake clean was because it was so thick with grease, nothing came out of the drain plug. Like, it was too thick to flow. And I think he ended up having to do several drain and fills to break up all the crap that was in there and get it to come out. But yeah, yours likely is not that bad, and you can just drain it and fill it. Oh, and open the fill plug before you crack the drain plug, just in case you can't get the fill plug open. No, and yeah. Zach's on the same wavelength as me this evening. Yeah, I can't recall ever having to impact them, but I've had to take my big breaker bar to them before. But yeah, I had a buddy that drained one of his diffs and then couldn't get the fill plug out and ended up having to refill the diff through the vent hose, which sucked and took forever. Oh yeah, I've definitely had one where arms weren't enough and I've had to do the kick the wrench to get it to break free. I've pulled on them hard enough trying to get drain plugs and fill plugs open that I was worried about pulling the truck off the lift. No, that's a good trick, using the hose with a funnel up top. Yeah, we've got one of the 5-gallon bucket pumps. Which makes it nice. Oh, glad taking the factory alarm out was easy. Sometimes they don't come out nicely, depending on how they were installed. Yeah, I use the bucket pump even on the floor. It's just a little bit awkward because sometimes you're pumping the lever with your foot while you hold the spigot in the fill plug. But yeah, I hate squeezing gear lube bottles into stuff trying to fill. we've gotten, we've got the gear lube pump, we've got a power brake flusher, and we just switched over to Castrol pods, which is like water cooler jugs of oil with a quick release funnel that goes under them. So you just fill them up to whatever quarts you need, and then dump it straight in. Yeah, I've got a plant sprayer that we use for transmission fluid on the 05 and up cruisers, the ones with the fill plug at the top that you have to pump it in. We've got the adapter fitting that threads into the side of the trans, but the pump that goes with that adapter fitting was like $100. So I've got like a $13 bug sprayer that we use instead that's just spliced into that hose. Never tried pumping gear oil through it, though. A drill pump would probably work pretty well. It's really going to suck if your fill hose falls out and you don't get off the drill quick enough. But yeah, one of the local guys has like an electric, it's like a diesel transfer pump or something mounted on top of a 5-gallon bucket with spring clips to go to a battery. And he pumps it that way. Yeah, the cheap sprayer works great for trans fluid. I'll have to try it for gear oil, because we don't get the 7590 for the transfer cases. We don't get that in the 5-gallon buckets, and we don't have a pumper for it. So those I still end up squeezing. Like D-pin tool, like for electrical terminals, like to D-pin those. I've got a couple of, I think Matco made them, just generic sets of different pinning tools. Wits End makes one that looks really nice, but I've never used it. I've got a Matco set that I'm sure Matco didn't actually make. Somebody else did, and it's rebadged. But, it works fine for the little bit of pinning that we do. But, if you're just doing Toyota stuff, I would get Joey's from Wits End. I've only done one fuel tank in 100 series, and it wasn't a long range like stock replacement. We just did an auxiliary tank. We did an auxiliary tank. I've done it in the 80 series, 100 series, and 200 series. And we've always used the long range automotive that Cruiser Brothers is bringing in. They're a really nice setup, really complete kit, and as easy to install as you would expect. Yeah, Matco's got some stuff that is Matco, and it's really nice, but a lot of it lately is rebadged. But yeah, if you call Ward at Cruiser Brothers, he can get you all set up with all the different options for all the different tanks they're bringing in. But the 100 series one was pretty nice. It's crazy. Like everybody's rebadging tools lately. Like even a lot of the Snap-on stuff is rebadged now for way, way, way more money than than what the original manufacturer costs. Well, I'm probably mispronouncing it, but I've always called them Knipex, but I'm pretty sure they're actually Knipex. But we always call them Knipex here. Yeah, I've had some Williams, the original Lowe's Cobalt stuff. Some of that was Williams, and it's nice. It's like my Matco torque wrench broke like a month or two ago, my clicker that we just use for doing tires. And, I asked how much to repair it, and it was like $150 to fix it. But I could get a new Precision Instruments off Amazon. I think I paid like $120 for it. And Precision's who's making Snap-ons. And it's a great wrench. I really like it. Yeah, I've got a ton of gear wrench. And it seems like a lot of the Matco stuff is just restamped gear wrench. Because I think Gear Wrench owns Matco, or the parent company is the same for both of them. But yeah, I've got a ton of Gear Wrench that's held up really well. I've got way too many options in the wrench drawer. I've got two big drawers that are just full of wrenches. I don't think there is a way to replace the upper oil pan on an 06 LX470 without removing the whole engine. The way the oil pickup runs through there, I don't think you're going to be able to get it out. The good news is the engine isn't that hard to pull. The harness comes out pretty easy. We just did one a couple of months ago. There's an O-ring behind the oil pump on those, and this one was cracked and brittle, and it was like spitting oil out the side of the oil pump and running down the inside of the timing cover. So we had to pull the engine, because the first step in remove oil pump is remove engine. But it really wasn't that bad of a job to get the engine out, get the pans off, do the oil pump, timing belt, all that jazz on the stand, and then put the engine back in. And the oil pans are glued on, like, with sealer. And it's not real common to see the sealer joints leak. Especially on something as new as an 06. Like, we're just starting to see some of the sealer joints, like on the 80 series stuff, leak. So I wouldn't expect an oil pan gasket leak on an LX470. That's not to say it's not possible. But I would look more at, a valve cover gasket leak, cam and crank seals, something like that. Yeah, I don't have any Pittsburgh hand tools, but I've got, some other random Harbor Freight stuff. Like our engine stands are Harbor Freight. My big disc grinder is Harbor Freight. Yeah, their stuff's like real hit and miss, but like the good stuff actually, like the stuff that's good is good. Crash, my other tech, his impact sockets are all Pittsburgh, and they're holding up well. It's like all my impact sockets, all my regular ones are Gray Pneumatic, which is kind of off-brand, and I'm pretty sure they're Taiwanese. And then all my deep impact sockets are like no name, just random generic impact sockets, and those have been going strong for like 15 years. I'll have to look at their hand tools next time I'm in there. I think the nearest Harbor Freight to us is about a half an hour away. We don't see many of the GXs. The ones we have seen, all we've really been doing on them is, timing belt and water pump. So, I mean, I guess that means there's not a lot going wrong with them because we don't see them. Granted, everybody knows us as a cruiser shop, so we hardly ever see, 4Runners, Tacomas, Tundras, or any of the Lexus variants of those. But the few GXs we've seen come through have, they've been nice and they've held up well. We've got a couple customers that have them. I think the only iffy part on those, and I don't know if all of them had it or not, is the air suspension in the rear. Makes it kind of fun to lift, but Metal Tech has a kit to replace that with regular coil springs, so it's not too bad. I've seen the 3/8 quarter combo low pro. I have not used it. Everybody makes fun of me because I started out on the body shop side of things. I use a 1/4-inch ratchet for almost everything. Like, I don't get out a 3/8 ratchet until I really have to reef on something. So I've got 4 or 5 Matco Snap-on 1/4-inch drive ratchets that are my go-tos. And I think I've got maybe 3 3/8 and 2 1/2-inch drives. I unfortunately can't answer how difficult it is to change the suspension. I've never actually done it on a GX. We've quoted it a couple of times, but then, for whatever reason, we ended up not doing it. But yeah, Metal Tech makes a couple different versions of the swap to traditional coils, like, different levels of whether or not it's bump stops and all that jazz. And they're not horribly expensive. Yeah, I've got more than my fair share of cut up and bent and rewelded wrenches. Oh, that is a point. That top shock bolt on the LX is terrible. We don't even try to undo them most of the time. We just sawzall them out. And if you guys don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and jump off of here. The dogs are pacing behind me, ready for their dinner, and I need to cook my dinner. So I'm going to jump off of here. I'm not positive if I'll be on next Tuesday or not. Next Tuesday is my dad's birthday, and then next Wednesday is my birthday. So I'm not sure when we're doing birthday dinners and all that jazz. So if they land on Tuesday, I won't be on here for chat next week, but I'll be back the following week. So yeah, I don't know yet, but there's a chance I won't be here next week for chat. But I'll put up coming soon thing if I'm going to be on here on Tuesday. So yeah, thanks to everybody for tuning in, and thanks for all the questions, and thanks to everybody that pitched in with answers to questions that I didn't know, and thanks for the guys that pitched in on the little donation button, and thanks for the happy birthday. So yeah, I'm going to tune off of here. Thanks for tuning in. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe below. And if you really dig the channel, check out our Patreon link down in the description. We always appreciate the support. And I'll catch you guys theoretically next week. And if not next week, the week after. Thanks again.